match with he had with Guerrero. And the thing, this was Rob Zombie entrance music, Edge, right?
I want to say
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so this was it was. I think before Edge obviously proved himself as a main eventer, I think at this point he was still kind of considered in that IC title, U.S. heavyweight title kind of picture, and this match to me proved that he could hang with anybody. The match was so old school. I mean, it had good spots, but like in terms of like selling the arm and Eddie Guerrero hitting that frog splash on the injured shoulder of Edge was just awesome. It was great stuff all around.
Yeah, it was. I think that as far as Edge is concerned, this was really in the midst of the first attempt to get him over as a single star for the main event. He had split apart from Christian. By this point, they had their feud in 2001. He was pulled over to SmackDown in the draft, and he worked some matches with Kurt Angle in the spring of this year. I think in I want to say Backlash and Judgment Day, which helped elevate him and his stance a little bit. He had won the tag titles with Hulk Hogan, I believe, on SmackDown in the midst of that summer as well.
Oh my God! I forgot about that.
Yeah, they put him in the feud with Guerrero. I think this was the first or one of the first in that feud that they had. They had a few more matches after this, and I think the ones, this was not a bad match by any means. I thought it was very good. I think they would go on to have better matches. I think there's a no DQ or something like that match that they had on an episode of SmackDown that is on the network, of course, with SmackDown, and also I think in the Edge collection, I want to say. Okay. So if anyone wants to check those out, I watched that one not that long ago myself. So they had a good feud. This was kind of the start of it, and it was a good match. I was going in, I thought Eddie was going to win, so Edge winning surprised me a little bit. But it was a very good match. I'd probably go 3 1/4.
I was super duper high on this match. I went 3 3/4. The only thing, I hate the spear. I hate the spear as a finish, and I hate Edge using the spear as a finish. That's all I have to say about that. So I hate the spear. Love the match. 3 3/4.
Okay. So next we have the WWE Tag Team Championship match. This is from the Raw side. It was the Un-Americans, is Christian and Lance Storm against Booker T and Goldust.
I think the timing on the Un-Americans angle was pretty rough, considering 9/11 was relatively fresh in everybody's minds. And they brought out an upside-down flag, which I also thought was in pretty shitty taste. And I remember being in Madison Square Garden. I'm not sure. It was during the Un-Americans run, of course. I was at Madison Square Garden with E-Money, and the Un-Americans came out, and they started singing New York, New York. Were you there for that? Actually, no, it was the National Coliseum. I lied. It was the Coliseum. It was Raw.
Okay. I probably was then if it was that episode of Raw. I just don't remember the
Yeah, the Un-Americans started singing New York, New York, and the crowd at the Nassau Coliseum was chanting "Shut the F up" so loud, it's about 13,000, that the WWE on Raw had to go to commercial break. I will never forget that as long as I live. The Un-Americans, I didn't like the angle. I thought it was, like I said, I thought it was rough timing. But the guys in the faction, to me, however, were strong. Except for Test had his moments. But, Lance Storm was good. Christian was good. Chris Jericho, right? Am I crazy? Did help them once or...
I think they had a loose affiliation at one point. I don't think he was officially in the faction, but I think he had part. I think after, not long after this, I think he starts teaming with Christian. I'm not sure if it's in 2003 or late 2002, but I think that he starts teaming with Christian shortly after this. Okay.
And Booked Us, those two guys were always very, very funny to me. I think they had really good comedic timing with each other. This match by itself, it was okay. It was kind of like a paint by numbers Booker and Goldust match. It didn't really blow me away. And I think the finish came when Test come in from the outside and hit him with a boot. Who wasn't in the match.
That sounds familiar. Yeah, it sounds right. I mean, I think that the one thing that I remember at this point were that Booker T and Goldust had become very popular very quickly. And I think a lot of people, at least amongst my friends at the time, thought that they were going to put the titles on them just because they were very, very over and the crowd was reacting to them really well. So the fact that they didn't win here, again, it was a surprising result to me. I mean, it wasn't like shocking or anything, but I was surprised that they didn't win. And the Un-Americans ended up keeping it by nefarious means.
2.5 stars.
That's what I would go with as well. 2.5 stars for this one. Not a bad tag match, but again, just a little ending was a little bit disappointing. I was hoping for a Booker T and Goldust win. So.
Same here. What do you got next?
Next, we have the Intercontinental Championship match, which is Chris Benoit, champion, defending against Rob Van Dam.
Styles-wise, two completely different guys. That's the first thing that stuck out to me. Being a huge fan of ECW, RVD was famous for having great matches with everybody. Benoit was as well. But Benoit was definitely more of the mat wrestler, a little more strong style, whereas RVD was more kicking, striking, top rope stuff. But they beat the shit out of each other. I think Benoit was bloodied like in the first 5 minutes of the match. In the mouth, it wasn't. Yeah. He didn't. It wasn't. Seemed like he got hard weighed in the mouth. That's a weird sentence. I don't want to repeat that one. The match to me, however, was awesome. RVD could sell for anybody. He made everything look good, kind of very similar to Dolph Ziggler and Mr. Perfect. And I also remember being surprised by the outcome of this match. I believe with RVD winning, he took the title over to SmackDown, correct?
I think it was – see, I was trying to remember this too. I think it was Raw. I believe the way that it was going was like Benoit had won the title maybe like a week or two before this, and he was going to SmackDown, I want to say. And the whole deal was he was going to SmackDown and RVD was on Raw. So I remember seeing like something with Bischoff, because Bischoff was a GM at this time, saying that, a win by RVD brings the Intercontinental title back to Raw. And I think that was right. What was on the line here. So these guys I also really like this match a lot. They went, looks like about 16 to 17 minutes. Benoit, I remember, like you said, Benoit was a little bloodied. I remember Rob Van Dam always had his hair in that ponytail, and by the end of it, his hair was kind of like, it was not in the ponytail because Benoit, they had a lot of rough, vicious looking spots. And the match went, I thought it was really good. I went 4 stars on it myself, and Van Dam got the win and won the IC title to bring it back to Monday Night Raw. I
also went 4 stars on it. I wasn't in love with the finish. I think Benoit went for the back suplex off the top rope. RVD shifted his weight, and then he went up for the 5-star frog splash, which he hit. But to me, the finish almost kind of came out of nowhere, and the crowd, with a little more crowd interaction, I think it would have, I would have put the match over the edge for him. But for some reason, the finish was just kind of surprising. It was surprising how long I think Benoit was down after the counter to the back suplex, but the 5-star frog splash, I was always such a mark for how RVD would jump in midair and like completely switch directions. It was one of the coolest looking, moves.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. So definitely a quality match there. The next match is another Raw match. Undertaker versus Test of the Un-Americans.
Boo! This match stunk. Taker was this Badass Taker, or is this just like, what was the other one? It was American Badass Undertaker, and it was Big Evil Red Dick. What was his name?
Wow, that's Big Evil Red Devil, something like that. This feud turned the Undertaker back to babyface, from what I recall. He had turned heel in December of 2001 and had been a heel from the beginning of the year in 2002 up until about this point. He had won the Undisputed title in May and had it for about 2 months. And he was a heel for that whole run. And then shortly after that, he basically turned without a turn type of thing, and was babyface going against Test. And he was the American Badass, I guess, representing America against Test from the Un-Americans.
Yeah, it was crazy to see. Taker got the win, of course, but it was crazy to see him like with the flag after. He was kind of like a dark version of Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, I think he was. I don't remember. He portrayed rode the motorcycle down the ring. It was during that era of non-dead man Undertaker. But he's a guy that I think the crowd and the fans always liked, regardless of what character he was playing. And people were ready to cheer him again, or probably were already still cheering him even when he was a heel anyway. And this wasn't, it wasn't a major feud or anything. They were probably trying to elevate Test a little by giving him a main type match against a main event guy like Undertaker, and Taker just come out of the title picture. So yeah, the match wasn't great or anything. I mean, it wasn't bad. and Taker again just turning babyface. They're trying to heat him back up again, and he got the win in a little over 8 minutes.
2 stars, Joe. 2 stars.
Yeah, 2 stars is about right, probably for that one. There wasn't anything too special about it. But what there was some special things about were the last 2 matches, which are, I guess we can call it a double main event. So the second to last match on the show is returning Shawn Michaels, as we mentioned earlier, against Triple H. It was an unsanctioned street fight. First time Michaels had wrestled in over 4 years. The feud, from what I recall, long backstory to it, of course, because they have a lot of history. But during the summer, Michaels had come back to TV and joined the NWO, which consisted of Kevin Nash and X-Pac and I think Big Show and I don't know, whatever. So
Hogan had left by this point.
Scott Hall was fired. So that was the deal. They were trying to recruit Triple H to the NWO. That didn't really work out. And then Nash got hurt, and Vince basically just killed off the angle. And Triple H, I guess, had a point where he was deciding which show to sign with between Raw and SmackDown, decided to sign with Raw, and basically said it was because his best friend was there and helping to recruit him. And then as soon as they came out as DX, Triple H turned on him and pedigreed him. So they never actually got to reform DX at this point, at least not for more than one segment.
That was the King of the Ring, right? I believe that was the King of the Ring.
When they reformed?
When Triple H was about to make up his mind and Shawn came out and told him to come over to... I
think it was Vengeance a month later.
Vengeance. Good call.
And so they did that, and he showed up on Raw, and then he turned on him. And they added to it by doing kind of like a mystery attack type angle where there was footage, I guess, from a camera in the back where Michaels had been thrown headfirst through a car window, and they didn't know who it was. And then that was also revealed to be Triple H that had brutally attacked him. So Michaels was off TV for a couple of weeks in a wheelchair with all these bruises. And then that led to him saying that he wanted to come back and fight Triple H. And that's what led it to the unsanctioned street fight that they had here.
A huge mark for the mystery attack angle. I think I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I thought that was awesome. And then as far as this match, I remember, I was 15, 16 years old, but I was smart enough to know that Michaels had been off TV and hadn't wrestled a match in 4 years. So I think you could agree with me on this one. We had decent hopes for it, but you can't have high hopes from a guy that hasn't wrestled in 4 years. I don't care who he is.
Yeah, I remember being nervous going into it, to be honest, because he, of course, is my favorite wrestler. So I was nervous to see if he was going to be able to perform at the same level that he was before his injury. I didn't know what they were going to do. I also was highly suspecting that he would lose because it was supposed to be a one-off match, and I was thinking he was going to come back and put over his real life best friend and then kind of go away again, just to have like one more match, just make sure to show that he could still do it. And they added the street fight rules to kind of protect him, and like that's kind of what I thought going in. And of course, that was all wrong because. Would you
agree with me that Michaels was a slower wrestler but a better wrestler than he was when he left?
That's what a lot of people say. I think that he worked a different pace when he came back, for sure. It was less of a breakneck pace than he was wrestling before his injury, and I think that he was probably a smarter wrestler in the sense that he got more out of the things he was doing without having to take all these crazy bumps and stuff that he was doing before the back injury. So I think that aspect of it is true. Sure.
To say this match blew away expectations is an understatement. They went a half an hour?
Yeah, I think they went just about a half an hour, which again was way more than I expected going in.
Yeah, the match was awesome. I'm sure everybody's seen the match. Triple H was bloody. Michaels was bloody. I'm sure everybody remembers the spot. It was Michaels hitting the elbow drop off of the top rope to a table on the outside, Triple H, and then the ending sequence saw a counter to the pedigree and then a counter to Sweet Chin Music into the pedigree, into Sweet Chin Music, bada, roll up. Michaels got the surprise victory, and I think that was kind of a way to keep Triple H strong, quote unquote, without having him take the Sweet Chin Music and the super kick. And then to me, the ensuing post-match angle where Triple H just laid into Michaels' back twice with the sledgehammer was a great way to get the heat back on him. But if you're going to do that, I think it would have been okay. with Triple H taking the